Hi everyone, welcome to the 7th episode of Blockchain Rock. We're here with Mikko Ohtamaa from TokenMarket. Hi Mikko, thank you so much for coming today.
Pleasure to be here, and thanks for the invitation.
Thank you for coming. So as you may know, and as we discussed already, we usually start by asking our guests, to speak a little bit about their story so far. So you're one of the two co-founder of TokenMarket. We already had Ransu Salovara over for one of the episodes, and now we are finally having also you. So it'd be great if you could start, telling us a little bit about yourself, about how you ended up becoming one of the founder of TokenMarket, and what have you been doing until now.
Yeah. So I think my story goes back to my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Like I started to play with computers back in the day when I was 9-10 years old. Started to learn programming from a book that's like Mickey Mouse teaches programming, and it was kind of fun back in the day. And then I did it for hobby for doing my high school years.
Mm-hmm.
So I was basically a self-taught programmer. And
you studied in Finland, just like for people. You're from Finland, right?
Yeah,
and you studied high school as well in Finland, no?
Exactly. And then basically when I left the high school, I was already working for some IT companies back in the day during the first IT bubble, doing ringtones for mobile phones. That bubble burst. I went to a university. I studied industrial engineering and management. So I actually didn't study any IT in that point anymore. Mm-hmm. I have a management degree. And while in the university, I was very, very keen. It was still early 2000. I was very keen on open source and this new way of doing software with Linux and all of this openness stuff and anti-Microsoft, what was the popular back in the day. I started my first company being a software consultant. In Finland, we had a very good track record of having customers all over the world doing a small consultancy for Oxford University and United Nations and so on. And then for the crypto, I got involved in Bitcoin exchange called Local Bitcoins back in the day.
When was this? Like
2013.
As it was really at the beginning.
When the first Bitcoin bubble happened, when it went to up to 100 USD or something. And I started to work there as a CTO. There was 3 people back in the day. It was interesting years. The website scaled from I think from 10,000 users to 500,000 users, and it's still one of the very at least in a P2P exchanges, Local Bitcoins is still I think the largest in the world. Then I went to work. I had a trip in the United States. I worked for some of the local companies there. One was the solar power company that was looking to use an Ethereum blockchain that was new back in the day to record some of the transactions.
So they used blockchain as part of their offering, or as part?
Yeah. So that you could record energy consumption and production on blockchain, and also have it then trade it on a blockchain because you have a kind of certificate.
But not exchange it. It was it
was more like more practical recording and then later rewarding people.
And why blockchain? What's the benefit in using blockchain as opposed to a normal database to record consumption?
I think the 2016 it was way too early for this kind of stuff. The benefit is there that if you have several players, for example, different companies working together or different brokers, you can share this data, and what comes from how I see the history that we had a open source movement back in early 2000. Mm-hmm. Then we had an open data movement that the governments are opening their databases and maps and stuff like that. And now we have a open transaction movement that you have these open ledgers that anybody can perform transactions because connecting and disconnecting to these networks is so easy.
I see.
And that was one of the key driving forces, that if you have an open ledger, you can easily get in new participants for your ecosystem.
See, and then you moved from the solar energy company into
TokenMarket,
correct?
yeah. So we started TokenMarket back in 2016. It was the vision was to tokenize company shares and trade them like crypto. The funny thing is that the word token was just being invented. They were called back in the day colored coins, like a Bitcoin, but then you have different flavors with different colors. And it was like not until summer 2016 when the token became the term what we are using a lot of stuff for now.
Reference, yeah.
Yeah.
And how come, because TokenMarket basically provides services to those who want to launch an offering, correct?
Yeah.
So how did you come up with the idea? Was that the business plan originally, or has your offering changed?
Yeah. It changes two ways or two times. So first, like 2016, tokenizing company shares was way too early. Like it was barely having a functional token was a challenge back in the day. So
just technologically, or
technologically,
also from,
culturally and technologically, because people didn't understand the concept.
What about legally? Because if you have basically a token which affords the same right as a share, then you need to have all of the
You need
to comply.
Well, 2016. You didn't even have that discussion yet, which you are having nowadays, and we even have some kind of understanding how it works. But it was as you can see, it was early. But what happened? We had a tokenization platform, and by the end of 2016, early 2017, the ICO boom started. So basically, unregulated payment token offerings, and we were well positioned to be the only company to provide those services back in the day.
Yeah,
and we had a good track record doing ICOs. We are not ashamed of our past. We can't hide it. So it was crazy years. And now afterwards, of course, all of this SEC and everything is in a different light. But I think we were very picky with our customers, and all of our customers were reputable. So we had a good industry reputation.
I see.
And that was one of the reasons we ended up applying DLT license in Gibraltar, because we saw that, okay, there has to be at least some kind of regulation. And then later, now we started it back in early 2018 in the UK with the local regulator FCA to actually finally do what we want to do in the first place, like tokenize company share.
You just mentioned tokenizing assets and tokenizing shares and how that was the original intent behind TokenMarket. And you just actually had your own security token offering, which was extremely successful.
Yeah.
So would you like to expand a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Would like to hear
finally, like early 2018, we started to see that the world is getting there. And UK FCA regulator, they once in a year they run a sandbox. We were a sandbox cohort 4 or a cohort 2018, however you want to call it, and we proposed that within the UK crowdfunding regulation, which is actually the most major crowdfunding regulation in the world, that we could actually execute these deals that instead of selling people payment tokens, we will give them real company shares, and they will be recorded in a blockchain, and the people will get them in their wallets.
I see. Yeah, because I've seen some screenshot of people receiving on their wallet the security token now. So how does it work exactly? People can click on the token, and will it give all of the specifics of the right attached to the token?
Yeah. So what we did in the pilot, we went to extreme. So the shares we sold are the same shares that the company founders or everybody else has. So we have only a one share class.
Yeah.
And it's represented by a token. And if you have the token, it basically means that you are holding that much of shares, and it says in an article of association that the token is a share. So it's not a proxy or anything like that. It's the real deal.
I see. And what about talking about, again, offering and all of what's going on? You know, what does that mean for the industry? The fact that you've been so successful in your security token offering, and the fact that now you were able to award the security token on people's on your customers' wallet. How is that affecting or contributing to the development of the industry?
Yeah. So first of all, we need to in this point, if you listen this in the future, many years in the future, it's super early for this stuff. So it's a nascent industry, and we are seeing a couple of players around the world and in UK or in Gibraltar trying to do this, and I would say that everybody is still struggling, and especially investors are still hesitant. So when they see STO, they don't know if it's going to work or not. So there's no proof yet, so to say.
Yeah, but which really, like, if you think about it, it's not about the technology underpinning the offering, because it basically amounts to having shares. It's just a different medium. But it would be as asking whether an IPO.
And the promise that STOs have been giving for investors that it's a liquid, it's will be liquid, and so on. But it's not actually that simple. So how we can make, for example, our shares liquid? Okay, there are going to be private marketplaces like we already have from the past. There has been many US companies doing it in the past. SharePost, secondary market that you can trade private shares.
Yeah.
And then there will be public companies like the INX offer. We can probably talk later, that are actually like the really public shares and will be very liquid. And what the STOs are solving, that it's actually solving the interconnectivity problems between different services. Like if I'm paying you a Bitcoin, it doesn't matter what kind of wallet you have and what kind of wallet I have, I can transfer it. So you really can't do it for private shares at the moment. So what you have to do is that you go to a nominee company, or in the US language you go to transfer agent, and you bring a piece of papers and say, these are my shares, and then there's a buyer somewhere, and you do some kind of paper agreement, and you sign a lot of stuff, and it will take 2 weeks or whatever, and you are probably making payments, waiting payments coming through, and so on. So it's not that if you transfer a share that you just I would take your crypto address and sending shares there. Well, technically I can actually do it today, and that's like the technical layer solution for the problem. And then there's the business problem, like how we are going to actually have some liquidity for these shares. Is there going to be market making? What kind of marketplaces there can be? And
AML and KYC must be an headache as well, no? Because you cannot have bearer shares. You cannot just transfer a share like you're transferring.
And in European Union, you can have a bearer bonds.
Okay.
That if you have debt instrument, that can be a bearer bond in Europe. And then bearer shares you can't have. So everybody, or in the end, we need to go to companies' houses and report that their real names and home addresses of the owners of the shares. So we need to collect that information somehow. But it doesn't mean that it has to be centralized. It can be also decentralized. So for example, if we have a few exchanges of private marketplaces, or a few nominees that are usually law firms that manage the cap tables, we can get that information from them. We don't need to do like every time to go to everybody and ask their driving license again.
How can someone transfer their security token? So let's assume I invested in TokenMarket and I received a security token on my wallet. How can I then pass it on to someone else? Do they have to be TokenMarket customers?
At the moment, yes. So at the moment, how it works, that everybody needs to have a KYC done with TokenMarket.
Okay.
But of course, the next step is that we can accept KYCs done by third parties, and then if the only like goal here is to make sure that somewhere there is a nominee or a similar party that can update the cap table and report it to company's house or whatever organization in that jurisdiction is managing the shareholders.
I see.
And for public shares in Europe, it's very clearly defined that it has to be what we call CSD, or a central securities depository, and there's 26 of those licensed companies in Europe.
And what about, because you mentioned INX, and you drew the parallel between TokenMarket offering, which is which is resemblant of a private company, and on the other end, on the other extreme, you have INX, which is also based in Gibraltar, And I know, of course, that you're based amongst the other countries in Gibraltar,
Yeah.
but what you were talking about with the sandbox is taking place in England under the FCA's seal of approval. But INX has recently, as we discussed earlier, filed the request to the SEC,
Yeah.
correct? Like to launch, for its intention to launch an IPO to collect between 5 and 130 million. It got a lot of attention in the media. So I'm curious, what do you think? How do you think that affects the development of the industry, and what does it mean generally? Like,
I'm super happy about INX. I went and posted on social media that this is the first SEC prospectus offer involving tokens.
Yeah.
And then I was kindly corrected by a US lawyer who came back to me that you shouldn't say that first. You might be sued for that you are saying stuff. And I was like, well, it's first that you can go to EdCard, that's a US system where you have all the filings to check it. And he was like, yeah, but here's this other offer which actually came earlier last year. It was a fund called ARCA, so it's not first.
Okay.
But they didn't, in prospectus, ARCA, they didn't specify that they are using a ERC20 token or Ethereum. It was like outside of the discussion.
Whereas the INX was very clear.
And in the case of INX, they made clear that this is actually running on a public Ethereum blockchain, which I think is the very strong message for both tech-wise, that it's Ethereum, and also compliance-wise, that they actually plan to use public blockchain layer and not, for example, some kind of private blockchain that some banks might have.
Yeah, no, I see. And what about, like, for example, if you look at the fact that, of course, the SEC still has to approve it.
Yeah.
So it's not final, and hopefully it will be a success story. What about, what else do you think we will be able to see in the next year? So right now, security token offering, which really, the impression was that it would take longer than this to start seeing, offering around, I think. And you already see token markets with the private offering, INX with this application for a public offering. So what's next really to come? Is it just mass adoption of these means, or is there some other form of financial instrument that you think will embrace blockchain and crypto and so on?
What I have insight from the industry, like, well, we see a lot of offers, or people contact us for doing STOs. So I think bonds are much simpler because there is no ongoing corporate governance. So you just file a prospectus once, and then the risk is kind of calculated in the bond premium. So and as I told, in the European Union, they can be bearer bonds. For example, a German company, Bitbond, they are running on a Stellar network, and you can just go to the Stellar decentralized exchange and buy and sell their bond units or bonds.
So people would be able to trade them wallet to wallet, like
very easily. Whereas for equity instruments like INX shares and or
token markets,
the token market shares, you still need to. We have still things to do. Like we can run it as a silo. But for example, if you have a partner in the United States who want to buy and sell these shares, how it will happen? They have a little bit different regulation with the transfer agents. But in the end, it's a very simple problem. So if you transfer to something for, if I give something for you, the proof of ownership is there. The problem for international trade is that if you are buying something from Russia or China, can you tell that it's legit? So that's what blockchain shows, that you really are selling a share that you are having, and there can't be two owners for the same share.
It's trackable, yeah.
Yeah, that has been solved.
What's the Byzantine general problem? Or it has a name like that, no? Of not being able to trade the same item.
Yeah, double selling, or
the double selling.
In Bitcoin, it's called double spend, but it's a technical problem. This is more like a business problem, that you are selling something that you don't own. So that's for sure granted, and that kind of it's not a huge problem, but at least it's solved. So now we can it will have impact on international trade especially. But then the problem of tracking ownership and actually having this real identity, which we can't record in a blockchain, like you really don't want to have your home address going around there in a public blockchain. So for equity, that's I don't know why it's more interesting for most people. We still need to track their real world owners behind those shares, and that's a problem we can solve as one company. But now comes the promise of blockchain. So how we can start interconnecting these different companies that manage these records for, I guess in the first place it would be the brokers who are selling these shares to their customers and so on, that there's some kind of communication channels, and what they are really looking, as I have discussed with the brokers, that you have a real-time cap table. So if you are buying, let's say, shares of a Cayman company, you can go to somewhere online and see that your name is actually recorded in the cap table, and it gives you guarantee that the thing I bought, I have it now.
I see.
And those systems we are still building. And the second business problem we are solving is how to make these private markets that we can buy and sell internationally. They already exist, but they're very inefficient. How we can bring this idea that I just send you the shares to work, just click like a single click and it works. And then from there, how we can move forward, it comes back to business and regulation, that we can make these private companies to become real public companies faster.
What about dividends? About distributing dividends, for example, it must be quite easy, no?
That's kind of a technical problem that blockchain also solves. Like in the case of bonds, Stellar, Bitbond, I think they're just going to you can just drop the stable coins to the wallet that holds the bond. So you don't need to start wire transferring everybody if you have
you
a
just drop it straight in the same wallet.
I don't know how cost efficient it is to wire transfer for 10,000 people every month, but doing it on a blockchain is much
very
much
efficient. And I see. Okay, I'd say that we went over everything we wanted to discuss more or less. So we spoke about your story, we spoke about the security token offering and the success the token market had. Congratulations again. We spoke about INX, which also hit the news quite big, and that's about it. Thank you so much for coming on Blockchain Rock. We hope to have you again. You're based here, so hopefully we will have you as a recurrent guest, and we'll be able to just talk about what's going on in the industry and the market.
I'm happy to come to comment INX, as I'm not involved in any role. So when the offer has passed the next stage, and then be criticizing there, like, did it go well or not?
It would be great. Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning. Thank you again, Mikko, for coming, and we'll see you soon.